welcome to the Eldritch Grimoire. As its title suggests, today's episode, Creative Destruction, the Force, and the Chosen One, discusses the Force, whether and how it can be balanced, and the role of the Chosen One in this process. Given that the Star Wars galaxy is a mythogenetic zone,
The land of dreams and madness.
to better comprehend the Force and its balance, it is critical to first review the elementary ideas of light and dark, dharma and karma. First, regarding the light and the dark sides of the Force, we need to recall that the association of light and dark with ethical, eternal ideas of good and evil, determined by an omnipotent absolute, is not universal. Rather, the notion that evil is a perversion of good that pollutes reality and must therefore inevitably be eliminated from it is inherently, for lack of a better term, Western, originating in ancient Persia roughly 2,500 years ago. These origins were detailed in the introduction to the Eldritch Grimoire, episode 2 of this podcast, which I highly recommend checking out. In any case, the functions of the light and dark in Star Wars were modeled by George Lucas on Eastern mythology in general and Indian spirituality in particular. As a result, every karma or action has positive or negative consequences for the persons taking them at the level of individual consciousness or ego. These consequences ripple outward, interacting with the karma of others to structure both the possibility for further actions and material reality itself. The morality of any action is therefore determined by the positive or negative effect thereof on others, and thus yourself, because the separation of your Atman, i.e. individual consciousness or ego, from Brahman, i.e. absolute consciousness or ultimate reality, is at once illusory and transitory, a delusion to be overcome. A deeper discussion of this has been provided in the preface, the first episode of this podcast. Furthermore, all individual actions function within the inherent and eternal nature of reality, that is, dharma, a kind of cosmic mandala whose lines comprise and shape all possible karma, all potential actions on the material plane. This cosmic mandala contains endless cycles and circles, all of which embody the eternal return in their creation, growth, decline, destruction, recreation, and so forth. So too is the cosmic mandala itself ultimately destroyed and recreated, destroyed and recreated, literally ad infinitum. Karma then represents any action driven by intention, i.e., performed deliberately through body, speech, or mind, which has consequences that ripple outward from our individual cycles. Karma cannot be good or bad, it simply takes place. How karma affects others determines whether such actions are right or wrong, good or evil, but these determinations are inherently, unequivocally subjective without the notion of dharma. In short, actions that align with, or better, aim to harmonize individual consciousness with universal consciousness, reflect, support, and affirm all reality, all being and beings. Eastern gurus and heroes thus recognize the absolute and surrender their ego to dharma, fulfilling their karmic duty by eliminating and avoiding all attachments, and thereby affirming the natural harmony and order of the universe. This world-affirming or force-affirming approach is the dogma of the Jedi Order, to surrender one's ego through wise disengagement from attachment and material desire on an inward journey, based on compassion for all things, which culminates in the joining of one's living force, one's individual consciousness, with the cosmic force. However, darkness and violence are as fundamental to dharma as light and love. There can be no birth without death, no growth without decay, no love without hate, no peace without war. In short, no creation without destruction. All destruction is, then, creative, and all creation is destructive. This is the Tandava, the dance of the absolute that manifests the eternal return. In the common, millennia-old Nataraja form of his depictions, Shiva may therefore be found dancing the Ananda, or blissful Tandava, in his creative and preserving aspect, or the Rudra, or fierce Tandava, in his violent and destructive aspect. Nonetheless, they are the same dance. Additionally, in every version of the Nataraja, Shiva tramples on the demon of ignorance, Apasmara. Notably, Apasmara must be subdued, not killed. Balance must be preserved in all things, even the balance between spiritual knowledge and ignorance. Apasmara is also often depicted clutching a cobra, which symbolizes the individual ego that we must subdue in our own pursuit of transcendental truth. Thus, in the context of the Nataraja, it's necessary to ask what the Jedi and the prophecy of the Chosen One actually mean when they refer to balance. According to Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice, this prophecy is as follows: "A chosen one shall come, born of no father, and through him will ultimate balance in the Force be restored." From the Western perspective, at first glance, this prophecy seems to point to the Messiah. As discussed in the introduction, however, the notion and mythological function of the Messiah cannot be divorced from their Western origins. That is, from ancient Zoroastrianism across all later Abrahamic religions, Christianity foremost among them, the Messiah absolves all darkness, all spiritual evil from the cosmos, and thereby closes historical time once and forever, facilitating the ultimate transcendence of all faithful beings, as the division between the divine and the profane is eliminated. Given that the maker, George Lucas, obsessively embedded the eternal return into every level of Star Wars, the notion that the Chosen One is the Messiah is clearly and fundamentally flawed. Even so, the prophecy's implications of the Chosen One's divine birth and its focus on ultimate balance and its restoration can certainly be described as messianic, even if there is nothing salvational about these actions. Shiva's cosmic dance, the Tandava, is therefore a better representation of the function of the Chosen One than any Western conception of the Messiah. Indeed, in Episode 1, and certainly a decade or so before, in 42 BBY, when the will of the Force, acting through midichlorians, impregnated Shmi with Anakin, darkness had not yet risen to the extent we witnessed during the prequels. At this point, Sheev Palpatine had only been a senator for a decade and was still in the early stages of training Maul. In the Disney canon, it is also unclear precisely when Darth Sidious killed his master, Darth Plagueis. However, the important point is that the Jedi, while overconfident and certainly far more enmeshed in Republic politics than peacemaking monks ever should be, were not yet corrupted by their decision to become makers of war in the name of political domination. That is, the Jedi had become decadent, but they were not yet in decline. This suggests that the function of the Chosen One is to bring the current cycle of the eternal return to a close by ensuring its final destruction. Accordingly, we can describe Anakin Skywalker from his inception to his final redemption as the incarnation of Shiva's Rudra Tandava, as an avatar of the cosmic force in its destructive aspect. As discussed in Chapter 1, both the Jedi and the Sith understand that
always emotion is the future.
For the Jedi, the light and the dark sides of the Force are in a constant dance, Shiva's Ananda Tandava, which leads to the harmony when forceful beings surrender to and affirm this natural, ever-shifting balance. The ultimate balance referred to in the prophecy is therefore only possible when the dance begins, when light and dark are momentarily equal. Since the prophecy refers to the restoration of this ultimate balance, this implies that this notion is fundamental to the eternal return. It has happened before, and it will happen again ad infinitum. The birth of the Chosen One is thus a natural cosmic mechanism, a step in the cosmic dance of destruction that must and will always be taken to clear the path for a new cycle of the eternal return. Each cycle is always destroyed and created with a fleeting, momentary ultimate balance in the Force, that at once concludes the previous era and opens a new one. This function of the Chosen One as a cosmic engine of destruction sheds new light on Anakin's actions on Mortis. The Father, who represents the current cycle in the eternal return, is mirroring its deterioration on the path to its destruction and end. As our protagonist, we easily make the same mistake that the father does, believing Anakin, as the chosen one, to be the new father, who will ensure balance in the Force by keeping the light and the dark, the son and the daughter, in check. However, as we've learned in this chapter, this is not the function of the Chosen One. The Chosen One is not Christ. Rather, the Chosen One is much more akin to Surtur in Norse mythology, an unstoppable fire demon who slumbers until Ragnarok, bursting forth from the World Tree and annihilating the cosmos even as he murders Frey, the god who preserves nature and life.
Now, there is no going back. No! What have you done? It did not have to be this way!
Yes, my child. It did. You and I are tied together. And your strength runs through me. This way, I take your power. I always knew there was good in you.
It is done.
And now, I die. My heart broken. But knowing the role you will play. You are the Chosen One. You have brought balance to this world. Stay on this path, and you will do it again for the galaxy. But beware your heart.
Cosmically, the revenge of the Sith and the rise of the Empire constituted a natural shift in the dance of light and dark within the Force that brought about the final destruction of one cycle amid the creation of another from its ashes. A question that naturally arises in terms of the prequel and original trilogies is therefore when this moment of ultimate balance in the Force occurs. For decades now, it has been believed that Anakin only restores balance to the Force when he redeems himself in his final act, killing Emperor Palpatine while sacrificing Darth Vader for the love of his son, thereby destroying the Sith, purging this evil from the galaxy. However, this is not how George Lucas structured the overarching narrative across his 6 Star Wars films, even if this was done in hindsight. As we explored in the last episode, one of the main pedagogical functions of the first 6 Star Wars films, viewed in chronological order, is to demonstrate how all systems and political collectives move through the eternal return due to their inevitable thirst for and accumulation of power. Hence, the prequels reveal the decline and destruction of the Jedi and the Republic, while the original trilogy discloses their rebirth and growth in Luke and the Rebellion. The mythological arc of the Star Wars galaxy also follows this pattern, as all things do. This renders the closing minutes of The Revenge of the Sith, already among the best scenes ever filmed, that much more significant. That is, following the utter ruin of the Jedi, the death of the Republic, the ironic, tragic, and inexorable final step in this Rudra Tandava is the destruction of the Chosen One himself, Anakin Skywalker. Obi-Wan, the perfect embodiment of the decadent Jedi Order, is incapable of recognizing this, instead reiterating how the Jedi have misconstrued the prophecy of the Chosen One.
You are the Chosen One! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them! Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness!
As everything that was Anakin Skywalker burns away, with him are immolated the last vestiges of the previous cycle of the Eternal Return. And yet, just as matter can never truly be destroyed, only recreated in new temporal manifestations of timeless energy, so do vestiges of Anakin Skywalker survive, to be born anew as the new cycle begins. Brutally, then, ultimate balance in the Force is restored and maintained only in these few moments, as Episode 3 draws to a close, as what remains of Anakin crawls towards its salvation and rebirth, and his progeny approach their own births amid the death of their mother. Collectively, these instances of death, procreation, and resurrection, albeit fleetingly, manifest this ultimate balance, thereafter fueling the new Ananda Tandava that has been initiated. Anakin Skywalker's fate as the Chosen One has been fulfilled, but Darth Vader's destiny has yet to be revealed.
The person you thought was the villain is really the victim. But now by adding episodes 1, 2, and 3, people begin to see the tragedy of Darth Vader. One of the key elements in episode 3 is that we see him actually put into the Iron Lung. The mask finally close on him, that now he's an artificial man.
Interestingly, Anakin's fate as the Chosen One is similar to Darth Bane's fate, as the prophesied Sith representation of this engine of destruction, the Sithari, 1,000 years earlier. This prophecy is as follows. The Sithari will be free of limits. The Sithari will lead the Sith and destroy them. The Sithari will raise the Sith from death and make them stronger than before. Although Darth Bane's biography in the Disney canon is currently a bit of a mess, in his excellent Now Legends trilogy, written by Drew Karpyshyn, Darth Bane has no equal in his ability to wield the dark side. Ultimately, he uses his power to eliminate all the other Sith, bringing this cycle of Sith Empire and domination to a close. The cycle of the rule of two and the unchallenged dominance of the Jedi and the Republic, the final decline and destruction of which we observe in the prequels amid the galactic resurrection and ascension of the Sith, therefore opens when Darth Bane, similar to Anakin, is destroyed through a fated act of hubris. That is, Bane's death fleetingly allows the restoration of ultimate balance in the Force via the elimination of himself, the Sithari, the Chosen One. Critically, none of these conclusions undermine the importance of Luke or Darth Vader's actions at the end of Return of the Jedi. These redeem and ultimately destroy Darth Vader, aid in the defeat of the Empire, and briefly enable the restoration of Anakin. However, Anakin's redemption in Episode 6 reflects the end of Darth Vader's cycle, lacking any repercussions for the eternal return beyond the merging of Anakin's consciousness into the cosmic force. That is, Anakin cannot exist in this new cycle. What remains of him without Darth Vader is at best a ghost made flesh, able only to express his love for Luke, but his consciousness can and will survive forever in the cosmic force, which is beyond space, time, or for that matter, any cycle, because it is all of these at once. Interestingly, and unsurprisingly, although beyond the focus of this chapter, as Mike Chen details in his short story Brotherhood, in contrast to all other Jedi, Anakin joins with the cosmic force, not through surrender to it, but through sheer willpower and his refusal to submit to the dissolution of his own ego. Accordingly, the myth of the Chosen One and Anakin's arc should inform how we view and critique both the sequel trilogy and the still developing so-called Filoniverse, for all of their flaws and merits. Because these narratives occur in such close proximity to the original trilogy, they are inherently part of this new cycle's growth, of the still unfolding Ananda Tandava. First, this perspective allows us to reframe characters such as Kylo Ren and Rey Skywalker, and narrative choices such as Luke's abandonment of the New Republic or the return of Palpatine, as elements within this broader arc that cannot, and certainly were not, intended to serve any mythological function as significant as the myth of the Chosen One of Anakin Skywalker. Second, with regard to the Filoniverse, this interpretation of Anakin and the Star Wars galaxy should reduce the amount of weight we are inclined to ascribe to characters akin to Grogu, Ahsoka, or even Luke and Leia. That is, while they are important participants in the creative dance of the Force, Shiva's Ananda Tandava, there is only one Chosen One, one actual incarnation of the Rudra Tandava, Anakin Skywalker. Finally, as he is wont to do, Dave Filoni has recently opened new potentials new paths for exploring the eternal return in the Star Wars galaxy, with the character of Baylan Skoll in the recent Ahsoka series.
Look at history. You realize it's all inevitable. Fall of the Jedi, rise of the Empire. It repeats again and again and again. What I seek is the beginning, so I may finally bring this cycle to an end.
This concludes Chapter 3 of the Eldritch Grimoire.